God morgon. Jag är väldigt glad att se att det finns så mycket morgonfriska folk här, trots väder och USA och så vidare. Som ni hör är jag inte svensk. Och vi har varit lite runt. Vi har blivit noterat sedan sist jag stod här. Och jag har fått veta att ni förstår ganska bra engelska. Så jag vill inte vidare misshandla ert vackra språk med mitt norsk-dansk-svenska. Så presentationen idag den vill bli på engelska. Jag har dock också tagit med Charlotte Dyring som sitter där borta, som är här. Vi är här under dagen och vi svarar gärna på frågor på dansk, engelsk, svensk eller vad ni nu ville. Men jag tänker vi går igång med själva presentationen. The agenda for today will focus on actually a brief presentation of who we are and what we do. Then we will go into the news. And with the news, I mean what's happened since last. Of course, we've been listed on the Nasdaq First North. And there's been some events. We released some press releases and some news. I'll focus on that, and then I'll dwell on some of the most important parts of that, which will be some malaria trials we have published about, a new collaboration partner, and then end up with sales and marketing, which was actually the aim of the IPO. We needed the proceeds in order to scale up sales and marketing. I'll tell you a bit about how that has been working and what has come from that. And sum up in the last slide, hopefully. The company, as we see it today, is a contract research development and a vaccine discovery company. The picture you see is very recent from last week. We have a highly educated staff, a number of PhDs and Master of Science, of course, as we work in a very specialized area. It was founded in 2010, but due to the fact it's a spin-off, we have more than 15 years experience and core employees that has been working with this system since it was made at the early company Pharmexa, later spun off from Apotek. And that means that we have produced more than 250, and we focus on what we call difficult proteins. Proteins in the term that people try to make them for medicine or for pharmaceuticals and have problems making them, and that's where our system really works well. And that means we have a lot of collaborators, top-tier universities and big pharma, a lot more than mentioned here by the logos. And the basis for that is we have a platform, which is shown to the right, in which we have all the components needed for producing biologicals, proteins, from research discovery into actual production. And we have had clinical validation of our platform via some of the recent studies, which of course is a very strong argument when you try to sell this to the larger companies. Why are we here? Well, basically, there's a representation here of somebody or something that's attacking everyone all the time. As a human being, we are constantly under attack, and this is a representation of a virus particle. It carries on the surface certain proteins and components to enter your cells, and if we identify those, we can actually take out the gene, and we can make proteins outside that. And this is our platform. The ExpreS2 platform is our core technology, and we make these proteins from scratch until we can deliver them purified. And we use that for several things. We go out and we deliver these into projects where they become what we call Subunit Vaccines, which is a vaccine where we don't take the whole thing, crush it into small pieces and enter it into people, which was the old days. Identify, isolate, and inject. Now we also look at immune therapy, which means not trying to prepare people before they get any kind of disease, but it could be cancer where you make therapy, it could be allergy. Diagnostics, of course, is part of any kind of therapy. You have to identify what people actually are having. And then we have a number of R&D tools. Beside that, we actually sell the platform itself. We sell it at kits, reagents, we give support, we actually make process development for people, deliver processes, cell banks, etc. And finally, this is linked to licenses. You have to have a license to work with our system, even in research. If you're going commercial, this is extended into where you do clinical trials. We have milestones and royalties associated to that. That is how we make our money. And why should people use us? One of the biggest challenges is actually for the new vaccines is to make these proteins. And we can do that better than others. And there's an example here where we actually enabled a product that couldn't be made. So that's a very good argument. Furthermore, we have better yields and better speed, which translate in this industry into time to market, and time to market is money. It's not only money, it is also the difference in a competitive market between success and failure. Then we have a clinically validated platform, meaning you can make your research, you can develop, and you can take this into the clinic, made of this platform, and that's not a small issue. The quality demands for anything that goes into humans are, of course, big. Finally, we are cost competitive. We have to prove that in a manufacturing part as is, but we strongly believe that, and that means we try to migrate this system to the end production and also become part of the production system for companies. We are in the range of pharmaceuticals, and as you can see in this simple illustration, you have the pharmaceuticals overall area, they have biopharmaceuticals that are made in biological systems. Then you have vaccines and immunotherapy, and the driver of all these has to be the diagnostics, of course. As an example, to the left, we have headache pills and antibiotics going into antibodies, which is a major biological or biopharmaceutical success for the last year. And then we have the area where we are in, which is the new vaccine and immune therapeutics. As mentioned when I presented the company before, this is not a small segment. It's the most growing segment in the sector at the moment. But we are also knocking on the door to the biopharmaceuticals, and we hope or expect to expand our platform to enter that part as well. Now, back to the news. We've had some confusion, and some of us have contacted us with a little bit of questions about what's the difference between the news you have released on your homepage, which are given in blue here, and the press releases. We have to admit we're new to this, and we had kind of a estimate when we had any news coming in, and we have a lot. Where is the cut? And looking at the rules, we said, well, market valuation, market value will define whether or not we make a press release or we make a news. So the first blue news you say down here was only released on the homepage, and it stated that an article came out, we had some of the authors on, and it was about our system in a peer-reviewed journal, and we thought, well, we can't make a press release on, we make a news. The second thing is Walter Crick choose to continue a license with us. They had it already. Now, if you don't know the Walter Crick Institute, Sir Crick and Watson was those who actually gave us the structure of DNA. And this is a very renowned English institute, 1,200 researchers, 100 million pounds a year put in by government institutions. So it's an important license, but still just an amendment. We have changed that a bit, and we will be better, and I think we'll put the bar a bit lower, as I can see what our colleagues and other companies choose to put on press releases. So we will be certain that anything that should have any impact on your knowledge to us or your evaluation of us will be put as press releases in the future. I put in a few releases that came just prior to the IPO. We had our US patent granted, and that's extremely important to us, and that came at the 21st of June. And of course it's important because we are very active in the US market. The US market is still the biggest market we have. Korea went in. Then we released what we call the placenta malaria, the first of 2 malaria trials, just ahead of our first day of trading at Nasdaq First North. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Then we have had the vaccinate license and another malaria trial. And I'll dwell with all these news when we go on here. The listing itself, we believe it went well. There was a little communication, a little shifting about the day of actual introduction. I can only say, in conclusion, that it's probably not the best idea to have everything in the middle of the Danish and Swedish summer vacation. It was mere organizational issues, but we had a successful listing. We had a slight oversubscription in spite that we challenged the Brexit, which we could certainly feel on the market. I know that you will know that. And we went from 11 pre-listing owners to about 511 as of the 13th of September. We went from a pre-money valuation of 33.5 to a market cap around 70. That has changed. You can see the value in the little figure below, that it's gone up. We are at the 7th of November, 40–50% up. From the start, it has been up to 90, and you can see there has been a lot of changes. I would love to discuss that with any of you who approaches me afterwards, but that will be too long a talk for this session. What did we actually say we wanted to do? In the memorandum, and I've marked those in blue that we have actually achieved, we said we had some plans for 6 months, and we are now 3 months and 10 days ahead. And we have had the first clinical trial initiated, as mentioned. We also have 1 new research license with a US partner, and we have 1 publication out there. And we do also believe, of course, the second point, initiate 2 new collaborations on säker. We are in negotiations, believe me, but that will take a little bit of time, but we still have 3 months, and we do expect to reach those goals. We are a little bit ahead, according to the plans again, because the second trial, which we actually pointed out, was put in to take place in the first 12 months, and that is the phase 1/2a study. So it's actually also a little bit more than promised that we recently did make a press release on. I'm going to talk a little bit about malaria, because we have spent as a company a lot of time on this, and I'll just tell you where we are in that situation. And it's also the 2 projects that are furthest ahead, meaning we are into clinical trials. Why do we have 2 products where we also have 2 trials? Well, it's a very complicated disease, and if you look at the cycle from the top and round, you can see you have a mosquito that is carrying the parasite into a human being. In this case, a female, which has something to do with, there's a little arrow going out. She could be pregnant. Otherwise, it goes into the liver, it goes into the blood, and it can be carried again by another mosquito, and you have ongoing circles. This is a large problem. Worldwide, we have in the order of 214 million cases, about 500,000 people die every year. And placental malaria, which is where you're pregnant, is responsible for about 20,000 mothers dying and 200,000 children. It's basically, as you can see on the heat map in the bottom, this occurs in a belt that's Africa, Asia, South America. But certainly also, as CDC note down here says, you find cases like in the US because we travel. The market size estimated for this kind of treatment, and that is in the order of $200 to $300 million, so it's not uninteresting. What we are focusing on is the placental malaria to the left and the blood stage malaria, which means where it replicates in your blood, and the actual consequence of this is that this is where you really get sick. If you look at the placental malaria, it was based on an antigen discovered around 2003 in Copenhagen, so these things take time before they get to this point. We have made material for the candidate selection. We have produced the cell lines. We have made the manufacturing process. This is a large collaboration, and you see all the legends in the bottom. We have funding from Germany and Denmark and Frame Program 7, which means all the work done here is not something we invest in. It's paid by this funding. The rest of the logos are the partners we have in here. And this is a consortium work that leads to something like this, and as it is now, the material has been produced, and this clinical trial has started in Germany, Tübingen, in healthy malaria-naive adults, and we expect to see the results of this around 2017. It's running in 2 phases because in a complicated disease like this, you want to test first it's completely safe, and then you start in Benin, Africa, a trial where people are actually exposed. And we expect to hear about the start of the B any day now. The blood stage malaria, I don't expect you to read all this. It's just an example of where we had a strong success in terms of the antigen here, RH5 that goes into this, was a target for many years. The Jenner Institute of Oxford, probably the most renowned institution in the world in this field, had tried to make it for years. And then we went in and we were actually able to make it. An article in Nature, and recently the article to the right here is the one that made a press release on, is telling you that this has been produced for clinical trial. And the little blue ticker at the bottom is not our marketing department. It's a capture from the abstract of said article, which meaning we do stress to get our things out in these publications because it's a really good PR for the company. And it says here, it says here that the work identifies our platform basically as a relevant platform for clinical trials with this kind of difficult to make proteins. The blood stage malaria has been initiated here in October, and it's a little bit more complex. It's owned by Jenna, and it's actually funded by the different logos in the bottom, which is also US aid that are giving money to Leidos that mediates that into Oxford. But again, we are a paid participant, and I think you remember from our first presentation, as a company, we don't take the money we have and invest directly into the development work. We are a paid partner, and then we bring it forward via the system and licenses. In this case, this is the blood cell invasion that this addresses with the antigen, and it's produced in our system. The interesting part is the study that has started now starts in England at Oxford, and it runs, of course, in healthy volunteers. And it runs again for about 1 year, and you identify is it safe and what would be the optimal dose. And then you actually go in, and then you make a challenge study. If it looks okay at that point, you take people, and then you give them malaria. And you compare those who's been vaccinated to those who has not been vaccinated. And when I say you give them malaria, you expose them to the parasite, which means you can interfere and cure them immediately if it works. But you can also see if this actually works. So we're looking very much forward to see if this will be a path towards solving one of the big plagues of the Southern Hemisphere. Vaccinate. I will just briefly say a little bit about those. The company has taken a license, and the reason I'm pointing this out is companies like this are highly interesting. They have a very special technology. It's a US-based company. It's founded by people out of Yale University, and they are actually world leaders in what we call innate immunity. Mostly when we make vaccines, we try to make antibodies. These people taking the system that comes ahead of that, and they have a portfolio that addresses the same diseases in which we are in, but they make it in a different way. They have raised about more than $100 million, so somebody do believe in them, and they're actually also backed up by strong venture capital. They address a system which is called the Toll-Like Receptors. You have a number of these, but these are all receptors that you have that can act directly when you get infected. They don't have to educate like antibodies. It doesn't take time, but they activate the antibody part. They're taking one of those, and this is one that sees bacteria, and the little thing that sits on bacteria is called the flagellin. Take that out, and then they make recombination and put it on whatever protein that represents one of the diseases you have in the figure on the left side. If this sounds complex, I can tell you it is, and this is also somewhat trivialized, but what they need is a system that can handle complex proteins, and that is our system. So we have high hopes, and we look very much forward to see this novel approach to these diseases as well. Again, right now we are not actually doing the work. It runs on a license, but if this continues, the license pursues into whatever clinical and development phase it goes. Sales and marketing. We could say that we have done, as we also said we would, an upscaling, and we think we are on plan, and I think that is of interest, to increase our revenues significantly, as we have stated from 2016 to 19. And this has mainly been done by an upgrade of the business development activities, and we have put everything in place. We have also gone in, we have actually a very high number on ongoing customers and negotiations as is, so we read it as solid customer relations management system implemented, and we have updated our promotional material. The brochure you see down to the right, brought a few copies. If you want to see how we present ourselves, you're welcome to have a look. We have updated our conference activities. We've been to a high number of meetings, met a lot of people. I'll outline that briefly in the next slide, but for us, we have noticed that it's not enough that people know us. We have to be out there. It was the conclusion that we had because the company prior went up, and we actually were at baseline when it comes to revenues, and then we leaned back and worked with what we had. And this is really important, and we do see the effect now of being out there, so that is good. We have also gone out now and we do targeted sales. That means we don't just go to conferences and see whoever comes. We address companies that we identify through a process where we look at, is a strategic fit? Do they have money? Do they have any interest in what we're doing? And that is in US and EU to start with, and we have also brought in external assistance, so we have local representation in the US, and then we have a France representative as well. And then we're doing a full plan, how to actually do this, because we can't activate more than we can run, and on the other hand, it's important to be in that balance. So I think we are very well in control of these issues. We've been to a lot of conferences. We've gone in and taken sponsorships, and as we speak, we have the Bio Europe in Köln running, and our business representative there are having 26, 27 meetings over 3 days, and we expect him to bring back a number of leads that we put into portfolio as well. You can see there's a blend of business and scientific meeting, and the reason that we do have a strong interest in being present and the scientific meeting is a system like ours has to be taken in early. If people have started and gone into development, they will not change horses. But we can help them even get started. And that's where we put the pressure in. And again, this is what's planned for now, immunology, technology, business in a blend. And we'll have to see when we get into next year, because at the moment we are getting to what we can handle. As you saw, we are not that many people. And at a certain point, we'll have to see how we bring it in. So we're doing a balanced effort, and it seems to work very well. So, in conclusion, we have been, I would say, successfully listed at the Nasdaq First North in Stockholm. I think you have a say about that as well, but at least I will conclude that until further notice. It will be interesting to see on the stock exchange what will happen after the US election in combination with the Brexit. We have turbulent times, but I guess you all know that. We have upscaled drastically our business and marketing activities, and we are seeing an effect. You haven't seen tons of news, but there's only been 3 months, but I can tell you that I have undersigned. In our business, you don't just sign a contract. We start with negotiating who knows what and why. So we make what's called a CDA. That's a confidentiality agreement declaration, and those takes time. So everything we do something, it takes a couple of months before we get anywhere. But we have a lot going on, and I hope to be back next time and tell you much about that. The new license with Vaccinate, the clinical trials, I talked about that. The validation, our platform, is extremely important. The clinical validation as such is something that we can use directly, and we address different other customers. We're on plan with increase, and we do have further expansion of the platform also in place, which means we're working on that. So what we see now is solid market interest, and we have a lot of negotiations, and I hope to come back and tell you more about that. So thank you for your attention, and I will love to take questions.
Tack Sten. Jag tror vi ställer frågorna på svenska så får du svara på engelska. Hoppas det blir bra.
Ja, jag kan också göra det på svenska i ett försök. På
Nej, men jag gillar det här. Det blir jättebra.
Okej, bra.
Kan du beskriva ett tänkt kundcase? Vilka typer av frågor är det kunden vill ha svar på innan man går vidare? Och hur långt har det kommit som längst?
Well, typical when we talk to customers, they have a problem. And the question is, can you solve it? And what will happen is that we make a confidentiality agreement. They tell us what their problem is, and we say we believe we can do it. And normally we would go in and we make a feasibility study. Take their problem, we do some experiments, we do some trials in the lab, and we show them we can. And then we continue. It's a little bit different. Some companies are very, very confidential. We can't talk about them here. They take a license, they take the system, we don't hear anything. They take it in, they ask for support for some technical issues, they buy reagents. So it is very different. The consortium, and I forgot to mention that we have a number of grant applications out. It's money, and it's non-diluting money. And we do expect to get some business on that part as well. So it's very different. In the consortia, it's scientific based. For the larger companies, it's very specific. And we know that the company that we mentioned, like Novartis, has stated this is a game changer for us because they can do things they didn't do before.
Okej. I det här försäljningsformatet som ni har med projekt, vilken slags visibilitet, hur långt fram i tiden kan du se era intäkter? När ni har fått igång en diskussion och till och med fått till ett avtal, hur långt fram kan du då veta att det finns intäkter? Hur stabil blir intäktsbasen?
Ja, alltså vår modell har ju... we have a row of different... We have the products. We have the actual product. We have actually for the last period been selling a number of proteins for diagnostics because during the process where we try to validate the system, we have made proteins with Ebola, we have made Zika proteins, we made other things, and those we can actually sell to people. So we have been doing that. That's down now, and it goes down to the bottom line straight. In terms of the projects, we have 2 times the revenues. We have the direct revenues, which means a company comes to us, and we are in discussion now, a package, where we do a certain amount of work. That work will normally progress within a year or 2. That's the time it takes to make that part. And that's paid. That means as we do that, we get money in. And then the long-term revenues will be if we succeed, if it's brought into the clinic. A commercial license, and that again is on a time scale that is from start at least 3-4 years ahead before we go into a clinical trial, and then it'll run over time. On the good end of that is if we go into a clinical trial and if it succeeds and we have our license in, then royalties for the product will go on as long as the product exists. So it's a hedged system of different revenue streams that have different timescales.
Och ni kommer få information löpande från de här projekten så ni kan uppdatera marknaden för er del hur det går med de projekt som ni har blivit inblandade
Ja.
eller hur mycket svart låda
Ja,
blir det där?
bra fråga. Well, the point is that some companies take it in. And we are only told when they release information. And the reason that some people don't want to necessarily to say that they work with us is not that they're ashamed of us. That's a fact that using our system tells their competitors something about what they're doing. And we have boosted a bit on that. We're into Zika, and as you know, $1 billion were released from the US. And there's a lot of money in this, and you really have to be competitive. So in any consortium, collaboration, we're in on information, we get it and we follow it along. We don't necessarily control every part, but we're in. In the direct company collaboration, if it's a more one-to-one collaboration, in some cases we work together and we make press releases together and we're fully informed. If you talk about the large pharma, they tell us what they want to tell us, when they want to tell us, and when they're ready.
Men när man ser på er utifrån, hur ska man vikta värdet? Är det i de här möjliga stora framtida royaltyintäkterna man ska fokusera eller är det på er löpande business? Hur skulle du vikta dem i relation till andra?
There is a certain degree of black box, as was mentioned. But the majority will be able to make tick marks. We say we reach this point, and a very good example is clinical trials. Clinical trials is something you are not allowed to actually keep secret, whoever you are. And you can go on clinicaltrials.gov and you can read, we are preparing a trial, it's running, and the result will be. The larger companies would, of course, make a big blur if it's a success, and they'll try to not say so much if it goes down. We will reflect that in a pipeline model where we can say wherever information available, this is the projects that we are aware of and that's running. We can't really control all customer information if they're just doing the license, if we're not running the part. But basically, we can give you a good picture of how many projects, what are the status last time that news was released, and how much value do they represent.
Givet att det är konfidentialitet som ni hanterar här med era kunder, är det realistiskt att ni kan jobba på 2 konkurrerande, säg malariavaccin?
Absolut. Also de här 2 vacciner, they're not really competitive in terms of placenta malaria is one issue, a different market.
Jag tänkte från 2 olika drug companies.
Yes, and
som jobbar på konkurrerande.
That you can do as well as long as we do it openly and just say we give you the technology. If the minute we go in and take larger ownership, which means that we own part of the actual molecule, that will be a different case. But as is now, we are very careful not to be seen as a competitor. And if we do so, which we actually may, it will be a very open case where we flag that and we don't have competing competitors in that area. Then it'll have to be closed.
Hur skalbar är din verksamhet? Du nämnde att ni skalar upp och ni lägger till folk och så vidare. Men på ett års sikt, kan du dubbla intäkterna, alltså de här direkta intäkterna på projekt ni gör? Eller hur fort kan ni skala upp om ni får igång försäljningen? Ni arbetar mer systematiskt med försäljning. Hur snabbt kan intäkterna öka? Om du tänker på de direkta intäkterna från projektet som ni gör.
The plan as is now is that we get back to having black numbers in about 2 years here, 1 to 2 years. And basically, we are not aiming at being a merchandise company, which means we just own money and we're happy. So the long-term revenues that will come, and that's a calculation, we need in the order of 15 to 20 projects running. As soon some of those will succeed, and we're talking markets that goes on to the hundreds of millions of dollars or euros, that means that you have substantial revenue, and that's where you get the real kickback on the money. That is where the promise is. It is though, so we have to say we can see that some of the markets we're seeing now, diagnostics and retail of that's good money, and that could actually also be an opening for more income that we actually expected.
Okej, tack så jättemycket Sten.
Thank you.
Tack.
Thank you.